Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
There she is. It's not Christmas without Mariah Carey, Patrice.
It isn't. Now, this is not her most notable
not
Christmas
the iconic.
song.
We're saving that for Kurt Schlichter.
One. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, good.
Kurt Schlichter will join us in 30 minutes. He's got a new column, wants you to buy your kids toy guns this Christmas, and he's got a good reason for it. We'll get to that. And in 10 minutes, Father Paul Scalia of the Arlington Diocese and give us his reflections on this Holy Weekend on the church's calendar. That's all coming up. I'm Larry O'Connor. She's Patrice Onwuka.
It's a happy Friday.
It sure is. It's the last Friday before Christmas, which
That's right.
always gets you going. And you just want to focus on the holiday. You want to focus on family. You want to focus, but you've got to focus on the news. You've got to focus on what's going on in this country. We love it so much, and we want to make sure that we can keep it and protect it for future generations. And that's why when we look at our southern border, many of us are incredibly disheartened, if not terrified, about what has happened under President Joe Biden. Jennie Taer is an award-winning investigative journalist at the Daily Caller News Foundation. She is covering the border, unlike most people in the media, and she joins us now. Hey, Jennie, thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So an extraordinary press conference yesterday with John Kirby attempting to field questions from reporters about what's going on at the border. And they continue to try to gaslight here, Jennie. And even journalists outside of the Daily Caller News Foundation and Fox News and Town Hall, even journalists in mainstream outlets are starting to say, hold on a minute. You can't just say this is typical, this is normal, everything's under control. Are things starting to turn here, at least on how the border's being covered?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing a lot more mainstream media attention to this right now because it's something that is happening so obviously in the public eye when you have thousands of migrants that are amassing along the border. They cannot be taken into the detention centers, the holding centers right now because right now it's just so overwhelmed and the numbers of people crossing continue to grow, and so that those groups along the border continue to amass and the Border Patrol just cannot handle it. And so in plain sight, you're seeing all of this chaos. And so, of course, the Biden administration had to face some questions yesterday, and it was pretty shocking to see that they just could not really acknowledge how bad it is.
Yeah. Well, Jennie, Alejandro Mayorkas, he has said that they have operational control over the border, and I think no one believed him at the time, and they certainly don't believe him now. Do you think, though, that the reason why the media is now paying attention and people are really irate is either because of the impact on a lot of cities, the Democratic cities in particular, or is it because they're looking at the people who are coming in and they don't look like single men looking for a job in poverty, fleeing poverty, but people who are in nice sweatsuit outfits, with a full backpack ready to roll from other countries that look like they are literally just using this as a bypass around our immigration process?
I think some of the biggest things have been the Democratic cities that have complained to the Biden administration about this. It's, places like New York City, of course, but then also recently Katie Hobbs, the governor of Arizona, kind of put the onus on President Biden and the federal government to take action as she's seeing overwhelming numbers of migrants come into her state. I think there's so many compounding issues. Another one would be the economic impacts with having several ports and railways along the border shut down because all of the personnel down there are being reassigned to help Border Patrol, and then other agencies like the Bureau of Prisons being pulled to help them as well.
Yeah. Well, and they've had to shut down these facilities because they've had to divert the personnel, as you've been reporting, Jennie Taer. Yet at the same time, you've got Karine Jean-Pierre and John Kirby yesterday saying, oh, no, there's nothing happening. No, it's fine. It's like, okay, if it's fine, then why do you have to divert so many people, right? Why do you have to shut down the railways? Why do you have to shut down all of these other things that Border Patrol does? So I've got to ask you, considering the fact that we've now gone over 547,000 illegal crossings in just less than 3 months here, because the fiscal year, the first quarter doesn't end until December 31st. We're seeing now that people are getting court dates for their asylum hearings 8 years from now, like 2 administrations from now. This can't stand. Is there a way to not just stop this with the new administration, but actually reverse it and deport people? Is there even discussion of that yet at this point?
Well, of course, like Trump has come out and said, he's going to carry out the biggest, deportation this country has ever seen if he's reelected into office. And of course, like you acknowledged, these are happening. There's court dates for 2031. The backlog now is over 3 million cases.
Wow.
It takes years to adjudicate process. We added 1 million of those cases in the last 12 months.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so of course there are a lot of questions about right now. The Biden administration, for example, has an order for ICE. It says that ICE has to limit who it can deport. It is limited to people who are, serious risks to public safety, border security, national security. Well, right now, if you're just overstaying, it typically doesn't, it's not part of that priority.
Yeah.
They don't really care about those kinds of people. So that is something a future administration may have to evaluate. And of course, you hear people like Trump and others, other Republicans saying that, we're going to carry out these mass deportations, but then they are inheriting this backlog in the courts. So
Wow.
how is that going to square?
To actually work out. Well, I mean, it does sound like a good day one policy, even if it's a talking point. But quickly, when we think about Congress's role right now, what they can do right now, not just in the future, we have here Speaker Mike Johnson is literally asking President Biden to take some executive action. And obviously, we've got funding opportunities here. If Biden wants Ukraine and Israel funded, then he needs to actually do something at the border. Or what is the White House's response to even just Speaker Johnson saying, "Hey, do some executive actions right now"? Have we heard anything?
So the Biden administration was asked about it, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, but they had just gotten wind of this yesterday and hadn't really responded. They haven't. But when asked about what can be done from the executive level yesterday, John Kirby kind of dodged this question and didn't really answer. And, again, they continue to put the onus on Congress to be able to do this, but we know that in the previous administration, much was done from the executive level, right?
Yeah.
Because Congress has been, for decades, this call to reform the immigration system, asylum system, has not been heeded for decades and decades and decades. So here's the problem that has consistently been there, but the White House just will not acknowledge this, that things can be done at the executive level.
It needs to be pointed out that the incredible difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration with regard to border, with regard to crossings, with regard to asylum requests, all of that was done without one piece of legislation voted on or passed in the Congress. This is all executive action. Everything we're seeing is because this executive, this president, chose to ignore existing laws and chose to reverse the policies that were in place and had stabilized the entire area. There's no reason that Congress is needed to, quote unquote, fix this because it was broken deliberately by our president. I know a lot of kids like Jennie on the Block, but we like Jennie on the Border. That's her Instagram account. Jennie Taer is Jennie on the Border. You've got an album dropping next year, Jennie on the Border? Is that the plan?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Excellent. We look forward to that. In the meantime, have a great holiday season.
Thank you so much,
week.
Jennie.
Thank you.